world, millions of children are trapped. Trapped in classrooms where they can't learn, frustrated by the teachers who can't teach. On side proposition, we believe this picture is wrong. This reality for the children can be made better. And this is why we believe there needs to be a change in today's status quo. Today, we stand here debating the resolution. This House will require all new teachers from developed countries, all new teacher graduates from developed countries, to work in developing worlds for a period of 12 months. For the purpose of today's debate, we define new teacher graduates as those who have received basic educational degrees and developing world by the UN definitions. Now, today our plan is simple. We plan to start a UN Foundation in which newly graduated teachers are paid the average wages for their countries to teach or train new teachers for a year in these developing worlds. Furthermore, we provide the basic teaching supplies in order for this education to happen. Now, today we will prove our points in three ways. First, the global education that we provide. Secondly, the moral obligation of developed countries to helping these poor developing nations. And lastly, covered by our second speaker, we are ensuring the best teachers, that the best teachers will be out there in the world. And our first point, education for the world. Our reasoning is that our plan provides a better education to the developing world in times of desperate need. Right now in the status quo, we see that education in the developing world is abysmal. And a main or a big majority of the reason is that we are lacking qualified teachers. And qualified teachers are essential because these are the teachers who inspire students, who make the foundation in their education to go out there and also make a difference in the world. And right now, the problem with qualified teachers in these nations is that they have a lack of training or a lack of schooling. Now, what our plan does on side proposition is we are sending teachers from developed nations who have the college degrees, university degrees, the ability to teach others to these developing nations, where they will school and train these other teachers in these worlds in order to improve their teaching skills. Now, this teaching will obviously require the basic or additional training these teachers need, and we will be improving the level of teaching in the developing world. Now, what does this mean for any society? Well, firstly, we are improving the education in the developing world as a whole. As I stated before clearly, education is essential to any nation when it comes to development or even the enrichment of a child's mind. And on side propositions, we are clearly solving this in our plan. What this means is we will be improving the economy of these developed nations. We need educated people out there because these are the people who are the entrepreneurs, the people who are creating jobs in the economy and improving society as a whole.
Can you explain me what is the difference between education or health? Why actually you are choosing these people? Why these teachers have extra obligation?
As I explained in my second point of moral obligation, we as developed nations, when we have all we need, when we have so much wealth, we have so many resources, we have always had so much, we have a moral obligation to go out and help these developing nations who are desperately in our need. Now back to our first point, where when these nations become developed, they will reap the benefits, they will have an improved quality of life, they will have a better society. Furthermore, we'll be solving bigger issues. Unlike the status quo today, where many governments believe the issue is just throwing money or throwing aid out to these countries, we are solving for a bigger issue. Because the fundamental problem with these developing nations in their lack of development is their education. Because when you give people education, you give them the ability to solve their own issues, solve their own poverty issues, solve their own social inequality issues. And that is why, on side proposition, we clearly believe that our plan is superior. There's also another impact, which is that we will actually be improving the developed world. Right now in the developed world, a lot of teachers lack a worldly view on education and on world issues that we, even as debaters today, are debating and desperately need. In fact, when teachers go out to developing nations, they get this new perspective, unlike the ones they get in lectures in classrooms. A perspective where they can gain experience by themselves And when they return to these developed nations, they will only improve the education there and access the same benefits to the economy, to social inequality, to solving global issues today. Now, moving on to our second point, or the principle to this day, which is the moral obligation. Because right now, developed world is not needy. They have the resources and they have the moral obligation to help. This is because there's a universal idea that people who are wealthy, who have stuff, we must help those in need. We see this in any religion, any culture around the world. Buddhism, Christianity, Judaism, and any other culture around the world, where any person with a heart will agree that if we have the ability to give people to others, we should. Especially when we are not asking people to donate their life expenses, to give away everything they have. We are only asking for one year where they can really touch the lives of a child. Now, this is a basic interhuman connection. And right now, obviously, in the developed world, we have the capability, and we are denying help that is desperately needed.
Yeah, I also think it's problematic to some old people where actual terrorism is quite common, where actual diseases are common.
I believe that your question is practically bringing the pieces.
No.
Sorry, irrelevant point. Going back to my speech, is that we are denying help to those that we need to provide. And but the negative effect of denying this help is that we are creating a heartless society where people do not care for each other, where people are not trying to make a better impact on others around the world. On side proposition, we want to create a society where people do care, and we believe that our plan is taking a solid step out there, especially because teachers are the fundamental way to access these abilities to help. This is because teachers, as I stated before, are the ones who really make a difference, who go out there and span the cultural gap that we desperately need in society today. So, we believe on this point, it outweighs any kind of argument, side opposition that attempts to bring it today, because fundamentally, as a moral obligation, we are, as a whole, on side proposition, bettering society in any better way than side opposition claims today. So, what have I told you today? First, that we have a moral obligation, as I stated before, and secondly, we're providing a global benefit. These 2 points alone outweigh any side opposition that attempts to bring us today. Because when we're not only bettering society through our education, bettering the developing world, bettering the developed nations, and also fulfilling the moral obligation basic humans need to do, we are having huge benefits to society. That side proposition we have won the day already based on this. So, for the development of the education of the developed world, of developing nations, for the creation of a better society, I urge a strong vote in favor of the proposition.
Thank you for your remarks. I now call upon the first speaker from Team Opposition
My proposition today has made two substantial mistakes. It will explain to us why, A, education may be the most prominent among the issues, and second, why these teachers in specific have the largest moral obligations. I mean, among all the other problems, why not send a trash collector? What obligation does a teacher have more than a trash collector? He did not cause them more harm. All he did was study and surpass his colleagues and do such. So we believe that the teacher does not have such an obligation, and we have no right to force him. And it could also be that that's transit for us. But moving on to our own points of argument. Yes, we do concede indeed that the educational system in these countries may have a problem, but that does not necessarily mean that we have that governments have an obligation And even if governments do have obligations to these countries, and then governments give abundances of support to these countries. I mean, there are still huge numbers of volunteers being sent there. Yes, they're in need of help, and the countries are going there, but that does not justify forcing a number of people just go up and leave their lives and being sent over there just because they're teachers. Yes, they do. They have told us that these countries are in need of teachers and have infrastructural issues regarding education. But they've not explained to us why teachers have the obligation. I mean, why not send a lawyer there? Why not send a trash collector? I mean, they've not explained to us why, among all the people who really send their help, the teachers have the highest obligation. No, thank you. See, governments already cover their obligations with huge amounts of aid. And even if there is still an obligation, we can't really force them to do it. Volunteer programs are still incentivized, and those who wish go there. There are still United Nations programs who are sent from developing countries there to make all the aid that they wish to make there. But we can't really go up and tell a person that they have to do it just because they finished their education. We can't tell them to leave his life and send them over there to risk everything, which will go in our own homes. We as the government think these people have the right to decide on their own future because they have no obligation to the developing world as individuals. And even if they do have an obligation, if there should be an obligation, this obligation should be to their own people. You see, this man has had no concrete harm. We'll first start with our own argument of why this person has no obligation as an individual. You see, this person has had no concrete harm to that country. He may not have even been alive back when the country had first been caused detriment by any other outer force. And if I have had no harm to that country as an individual, then I should have no obligation to them. That just works in the way of community service. Some criminals, because they've done harm to the society, are enforced to do community service, so that they may atone for the detriment that they have done. No, but these teachers have done absolutely no detriment to these countries, and so they have no obligation. And we also believe that the idea of obligations are mutual. See, I have an obligation to my people of being respectful to them, of abiding to the law. The same things go to them. That is how obligations work. However, in this community, there would not provide anything for that teacher. And even if we do have an obligation as a government, which we do not say we have, we the developed world give massive development aid to them. Banks funded by the developed world give massive amounts of microcredit. They give aid. For example, I'll take you to the United States covers about 70% of Ethiopia's budget every year. Like 90%, 90 countries in all of the world right now are surviving on the developed world's budget. We believe that there's already been done enough, and that is justified that we send the teachers over there. Go.
As I stated before, just sending money and throwing cash to these nations is not solving the fundamental problems that we have a moral obligation to.
Yes, it is indeed true that money may not be instrumental in solving all of these problems. However, it is still incentivized that doctors are being sent there. Volunteers still go there. Teachers go there on their own will. So just because, as a government, we may or may not have an obligation, that does not justify us sending teachers over there. These teachers have no obligation, even if a government has an obligation. That brings us to our other point. We believe that this man has an inherent right to decide on his own future. You see, this man has spent so many years of his time invested out of his human capital. No, thank you. This man has invested out of his human capital for years of education. He spent his time. He's paid a fortune in college tuition. He's invested in textbooks. He spent countless hours studying, going above his colleagues and classmates. To come to that point, we believe that a man who has invested so much in his own life has an inherent right, and because also he's caused no detriment to society, to be able to decide on his own future, to be able to pursue his own life, his own meaning of life, and his own happiness. And it is not our place as a government to get in that way. If a government should have an obligation, that is not directly success by its individuals. No, thank you. And typically, telling out who has no obligation and rights to the, and who has a right to decide, we lower his life standards, and we prevent him from pursuing his own life, which was exactly what my speaker was trying to say, our second speaker was trying to say in his POI. I mean, the thing is, in the developing world, it's like that he could be sent to a place like Afghanistan or Iraq, where there's school bombings regularly. Because of the bomb, just because you had an obligation, you would be stopping his pursuit of happiness in life. Yeah, you would have been forcing him there. There's no justification for that. Even if he's sent to a place like Rwanda, he could quite as easily be infected by a disease, again causing problems to him. If he is a Christian man sent to like a Muslim country, it is quite reasonable to believe that he would be confronted by alienation. It would cause him great detriment, no thank you. He may not be able to adapt to that culture. And he will also be spending a lot of his precious time up there. We believe that because of these reasons, we'd be preventing him from pursuing his happiness in life, and that is a great detriment. As a government, I have an obligation to improve the life standards of my own people, and not force their hand and lower them. But before an obligation to any other country, I have an obligation to my own people. And by doing this, I completely go against it. And as for my second argument, how as a government we have an obligation to our own people? See, our own, even in the developing world, our education system isn't all that great. We still have infrastructural issues. In certain districts, there are not enough amounts of teachers. There are not sufficient amounts of educational communities. However, even if we, as a government, within our country, we have nearly perfected our educational system, we believe that the small benefit that we would be providing our own country with, our own education system with, just by some teachers remaining, we think that is more of a priority. Because our main concern is our own people. These people who we're looking at, they founded the government. They protected the government by fighting against enemies, by struggling to keep it up, by paying taxes and by working each and every day. So, because of all these points, by explaining how this teacher has no obligation to them, even if the country may have an obligation, we believe on many points that this side proposition will be detrimental, and that's why we go.
Thank you. I now call upon the second proposition speaker.
To live, to love, to learn. That's the model many teachers live by. They live to love their students and to love the material they teach. And they are constantly learning about the new species annually and about how to deal with energetic kids or how to better teach any material. And Side Proposition today respects and admires these teachers. And so Side Proposition today is proud to propose the motion this House would require all new teachers from the developed world to work in the developing world for a period of 12 months. Now, before I extend the proposition case, I would like to first address the opposition case, starting with their first point, that teachers have absolutely no obligation for the developing world. Now, I would like to address this in two ways. Now, the first of all is the fact that we, as humans, have an obligation to help those who do not have as much as we have. Now, so team opposition may try to persuade you with their argument that it's okay if we don't have a heart, and it's okay if we don't follow the morals or the conscience that guides us through our daily lives, because we don't need to follow that. But simply, when every culture and every religion does not preach for you to only fend for yourself, that preaches for you to go and help others, because it is moral to do so when you have the ability and the capability to help others. We believe that team opposition is simply standing on the wrong side of the moral spectrum in today's debate. And on the second way to address this issue, I will also be addressing their argument of no obligation in the third argument today presented by Side Proposition. Now, the first argument I'll address and taken care of Their second argument is, again, of their obligation to only their own people. Now, again, as humanity, we are not obligated. They seem to claim that people are somehow the same as government, because governments are formed, first and foremost, to be obligated to their own people. But as humans, as people, we are not obligated to only our own country. We are, in fact, obligated to humans as a whole. And this is, in fact, a very similar response to their first argument, simply because these two arguments are the same argument, that we don't have a responsibility for anyone else, that we don't need to care or we don't need to help them at all, simply because we have no moral obligation, when in fact this point was already taken care of. So with the opposition case addressed, I would like to extend the proposition case, but before that,
If a person doesn't need to have a moral obligation, which you cannot shove down his throat or enforce on him, would he not volunteer on himself, out of his own direction?
Right, I will address that in my third argument, but not only that, if we do indeed have a moral obligation, then it is necessary that we act upon this moral and be the righteous people that we are. Now, addressing and extending the first point from the proposition that we are promoting global education. Now, as the first speaker from side proposition has already noted, the fact of the matter is that both the developing world and the developed world will be benefited. The developing world will gain from the experience and knowledge of the teachers who are trained at accredited and qualified institutions in the developed world, while developed teachers go to the developing world and gain new perspectives and new life experiences that can simply not be learned from textbooks or from reading the news. You see, this kind of global interactions and these kinds of interactions between cultures and countries will only benefit global education and global connectedness as a whole. And we believe that this is a major factor and a major step forward in helping to raise education standards across the globe. Now, even Team Opposition has stated that indeed developing countries require help. And as Team Opposition has shown you today, throwing them money, throwing them aid, building them schools will not help when there are no qualified teachers inside them to actually change the lives of the people in the developing world. And since Team Opposition realizes that the developing world does need help, Team Opposition proposes to you a plan that will actually give the developing world the help they need. And now I would like to move on to Team Opposition's second point, that we as a world and we as a globe, we as humanity have a moral obligation to help those who have less than we do when we are perfectly capable of helping them. Now, Team Opposition states, again, that teachers would be risking their health or risking their lives, or it's simply not justified to force these teachers, and they have no obligation compared to all these other people. But yet we must realize, again, that there are also health workers working in these countries, that the UN is also addressing all of these other pressing issues, and yet the UN has, as of yet, failed to realize that teaching a man to fish is better than giving him fish forever. And so this is why Team Opposition proposes this plan, to ensure that as a result, developing countries can become self-sufficient, and that as a result, teachers who are working in these developing countries will also not be compromised personally as a result. So as you can see, while fulfilling the moral obligation that Team Opposition shows you that humanity does have, we also assure that along with the United Nations, that teachers who are working in these places are not being compromised at all. And so, by fulfilling this moral obligation in which developed countries, as defined by the United Nations, do have the capability and the ability to help out these developing countries, we believe side proposition has shown that the moral obligation has been fulfilled with side proposition's plan. And that's the third argument of side proposition, that we are ensuring the best teachers go into teaching. Now, true teachers are about those who truly care about teaching students. They care about their students and their teaching, and they care about the subjects that they are passing on to their students because they are satisfied when they see that their students understand and that they're learning and that they're growing as human beings. And so, for example, in Newtown, Connecticut of last year, Adam Lanza, an armed gunman, barged into an elementary school and killed 27 people, including 22 children and 5 adults, including 2 teachers. Now these two selfless teachers, one of whom hid her entire classroom in a closet and sat calmly in a chair when the gunman came in, told the gunman that her children were across the school in the gym, and the gunman shot her in the head. This other teacher used herself as a physical shield to save 7 of her students, and yet these selfless sacrifices prove that these teachers are true teachers. Now, side proposition does not expect all teachers to be equally selfless, to promote the ultimate sacrifice. But yet, side proposition realizes that when a teacher cannot even give up 1 year of their life, they're not giving up their future. They're not giving up their lives. They're merely giving up 1 year of their personal luxuries, of their creature comforts. And as teachers who claim to be teachers cannot even do that, then side proposition believes they're better off finding a job in another field because they simply cannot care for developing countries, and they simply cannot care for those people in developing countries that need the most education and that need the most help. And so side proposition with this plan will also weed out teachers who are not true teachers. And so for all of the above, the fact that side proposition is promoting global education, is promoting the moral obligation of humanity, and is promoting the quality of education, side proposition is proud.
Thank you. I now call on the second opposition speaker.
Yes, this proposition is a good thing and seek for goodness. But we can understand why do we have this obligation. Yes, they give some obligation about our government. Yes, we can concede at some point. Government has some obligation to those countries because they exploited them in the past, because they done some bad things to them, because they are in better conditions. But they fail to actually prove us why these individuals, why especially all the teachers have these obligations. What they are saying, actually we fulfill our obligation by development play. Yes, we don't say it's totally enough, but we have international organizations, charities, we have volunteer work. Actually, if you are really good, if you want, like, if you are righteous, if you are the angel teacher, then you can just go there. We don't prevent this. But what we are doing is, actually, if you don't want whatever, something, or don't want something like that, we don't see any reason, and we don't see how they explain that actually these individuals have obligations. Don't just explain how state has obligations, but explain how individuals, especially teachers, have obligations. That before I have 5 points for people. First point. They came and said that actually we have obligations to everyone if we actually own more than that, if we are in a better position. Let's look at an example. I bought an iPhone, but I could buy an Samsung. But I bought an iPhone because I want it. Actually, between that, because I bought an iPhone, I actually paid extra $100, and it wasn't a necessity. I could just buy that Samsung. But because of that $100, actually I could give to Africa, that could actually save children's life, or actually give stuff that give them food for them. But I don't do that. They have to show, actually, I can do it voluntarily, but why I actually have this obligation to, if I own like that, that's actually their principle, actually, deny all the principles of capitalism. You can't have experiment, you can't have luxury, because you have more, then you have to give them. It's not the year of our role. That's the second point. We have obligations to everyone. No one is that. We are not obligated to everyone. Remember our first speaker's argumentation. Obligations are mutual in our country because of social contract. Yes, we are obligated to each other, but obligation is like based on respect, based on actually mutual, it's not mutual responsibility. Yes, everybody is obligated to you, and you are mutually obligated to me. But in this situation, actually, they don't show how actually these teachers have the mutual obligation with those people, and how actually other people are excluded from them, others like such doctors, policies, and third point, we should be righteous, we should be the good people, we should be the enemies. But what they are saying is, we are obligated to be good, but we are obligated to not to harm themselves. We don't have that obligation to be good in anything. And yes, what they are saying is, we can be open. Let's put the example, why countries obligated? Because they have something bad in the future, but not discovered. Work right now. What? Because for years we give billions of dollars for development plans. And what I think as individuals excluded from here, actually their money is gone. And then this fourth point, their argument, education will stop their dependence and they will be improved. But what they are saying, actually another dependence, because you will send your teachers and they will again depend on you. And it's that. And we don't say, actually, education is the only reason, because of economical reasons, because of social reasons, racism, poverty, hunger. And we don't say, if those people are hungry, giving education to them won't solve the problem, because those people will seek for other things. Those people will go and kill other because they are hungry, because they can't be patient. And let's last when teaching should sacrifice, because it is nature of being a teacher, simple and legal, ladies and gentlemen. It's good for every country. If you are a good man, then go and do volunteerism. You can afford anyone that being graduated, same thing, just as physical science. But came to our point, yes.
Do you believe that bad people deserve to be teachers?
I don't think it's a relevant question. Yes, bad people can be teachers, and yes, they go and give their lesson, and they don't have any other obligation to just to be the good guy. And if they do something bad, actually we will punish them, and actually they will get their punishment in our. That came to the point of practice. We believe that their proposition has harmed to both individuals, their countries, and developing world. Let's look at the career. Actually, as a teacher, I'm a teacher. Actually, I have planned for my career. And I have planned a lot. And my advice specifically says, I have the right to actually pursue my meaningful life. And in this meaningful life, if I want to make a PhD, or if I want to like a work in a good private school, that money is not a short time design. Now during this time, by forcing them to go there, actually you will stop their right to actually use their opportunities for just one year. They could get employment demand, employment offers, and they could actually have, they could actually choose some chance. And we don't see the justified harm for those people, because actually, as my particular, they work themselves and they right to choose their and nothing. And second point, actually, how to affect those teachers if they go? Yes, those countries, we do have security problems, and such, diseases and such. And also, because of the culture, because of the different curriculum, because of the different teaching style, when those new teachers go there, because they don't have the actually solid teaching style, because they don't have the experience, they will go there and they will learn the education there. And because of those countries a lot different than ours, and when they will come back, they will teach, they will exercise a lot of difficulty, because our curriculum is quite different, our languages are quite different, our cultures are quite different, our students are quite different than the older. Then, because of that, after coming, they will have hard time to get used to develop work again. And what we see is simply inefficient. Since we waste a lot of time for those people, and since actually we care for the betterment of our work. And third point, discouragement for teaching candidates. If you just force those teachers, people don't, not all teachers actually good, writers and engines, and then those teachers can actually think that actually, like, if I become a teacher, I will have to go to Iraq, I will have to go to Afghanistan. Those actual teachers can then think that, yes, that teacher, being a teacher is a good thing, helping people is a good thing. But I don't want to go there, I just want to work with my country, I want to be my friend, I want to be with my mother, my father, maybe my wife. Therefore, what will they do? Yes, teacher is not the best job to have. Therefore, actually, we will have best teachers, actually, everyone will turn to art. And what's that thing? Since they can't show us the individual part, individual obligation, since we can't show them, actually, they like to work today, like, this is the
Thank you. I now call on the third proposition.
If you give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. If you teach a man to fish, he can feed himself for life. This age-old adage rings true, especially for this debate. The opposition's answer is education is secondary, education is not important. Today, we will be examining three areas of clash. First, the developing world. Second, the developed world. And lastly, government obligations. Then we will look at this debate holistically and view the world of the opposition and of the proposition. Now, on the developing world, the opposition asks, why should we value education first? But what do you provide? They say, trash collectors? Really, trash collectors? Teachers are the people who can ultimately make a difference. The problems of hunger, poverty, racism. By educating children, you give them ways, you give them tools to lift themselves out of poverty, and you give them ways to feed their stomachs, to feed their children, and so ultimately, teachers are the ones who can solve all these problems that the opposition lists. So, teachers come first, and education comes first in value, because teachers can ultimately solve the problems in developing nations, because they educate people, they give them the tools to lift themselves out of poverty, and ultimately, they help the developing world more. Again, the opposition says we must look to ourselves first. First of all, we have universal standards, we have universal morals that go across borders, that go across countries, that go across different religions. Buddhism, atheists, Christians, Jews, all of these different religions share the same common morals of human worth, of charity. And so you have to look to that proposition because you best prove why we need to enforce universal morals rather than looking to ourselves first, which is selfish and self-centered, and ultimately cannot stand in this round unless you want to vote on heartlessness, which I strongly advise against. Yes.
See, if these morals are so universal and so enforced, then why do we have to force these people? Would they not go out of their own?
All right, thank you. That's actually what I was getting to next. On volunteers. First of all, volunteering does not weed out bad teachers. If we let the good teachers volunteer and the bad teachers and teachers who do not care, just stay in the States, stay in Europe, stay in their country, stay in their homeland, then ultimately bad teachers will still remain. The proposition gives you the best education, the highest quality of education, the best teachers, by ultimately forcing the ones who are passionate, forcing teachers forcing people going to college to make the choice. Do I care more about the future? Do I care about my pupils? Do I care about changing the lives of children across the world, or do I want to look after myself? And ultimately, volunteering does not have the unique advantages of the proposition's plan, because it gives good teachers the ability to go out, but it lets bad teachers stay. And so that is an important impact for this round, and we uniquely solve this problem of bad teachers. And also, our plan gives teachers backing from the UN, and so we are also uniquely solve this volunteer issue because we've given you a clear model on how we give supplies and other aid to these teachers. And so you should prefer the proposition on volunteering. On the argument of dependence in the developing world, we clearly state in our two theses how we will train developing nations with these teachers, and so ultimately we are decreasing dependence and increasing independence by training. And lastly, the opposition wants us to give money, to throw cash. They want government to just give cash to the developing world. However, This is not a solution because we've given cash. Many countries have given cash in the past. Many developed countries have given cash in the past, but we still have these terrible problems. And so they're trying to argue for a terrible precedent that has already been not solving these problems. So on the developing world, we ultimately gain the most benefits. We increase education, and ultimately that is a prerequisite for all other, for solving all other problems such as hunger, poverty, because we teach them how to get jobs, we teach them how to solve problems, and we teach them how to fill their stomachs and their families and provide. Lawyers and tax collectors, they do not provide the tools to create a better world. Second, in the developed world. First, let me make it clear that in the developed world, we are ultimately helping education. First of all, there are existing teachers in the developed world, so we are not taking away teachers from the developed world. We are just taking the new graduates for a year, putting them back into developed countries. And so we're ultimately not taking these teachers away, so that's not a good point from the opposition, does not stand. Also, they said that there will be a shortage of teachers. That is a very cynical outlook on life, because the opposition is assuming there's a shortage of good, compassionate, and knowledgeable people. And if we have that, then what is our world coming to? And so, one second. And so ultimately, the opposition points do not stand, yes.
It's not about being bad. It's about not having your mother around you, not having your father around you for a year.
Thank you. We have to look at what makes a good teacher. Timer, please do not talk to your team. We have to look at what makes a good teacher. What makes a good teacher is passion. What makes a good teacher is inspiring future generations. And so if these people cannot sacrifice the comforts of home for 1 year, then they're not qualified to teach future generations. They're not qualified to make judgments on how the next generation of people globally should be educated and trained. We're increasing the quality of education in developed and developing world by choosing passionate teachers who fulfill the belief of teaching and who help those who need them and who value those who need them above all else. Teachers who value future generations, teachers who value future children and the education of those in developing worlds who need them over the comforts of home. The opposition claims that it is dangerous for teachers. However, passion and desire should drive people who are really passionate about teaching to teach in the developed world. We talked about the Newtown example, which was a true example of great teaching, and what does the opposition do? They laugh. And so that's just some summation of this debate. We are giving you serious impact on how we can solve major world problems and how we can have the best teachers, best education, and solve the problems of hunger, solve the problems of racism. And ultimately, the opposition is not giving any benefits to this world. They're saying throw money, which has not worked, and we are vindicated by history, we are vindicated by the past. And the opposition also claims that we need employment. However, what is a better qualification than going to a developing nation and learning new things from the teachers there? Although the teachers may not have as great of an education as the developed world teachers, they can still teach the teachers from the developed world new things, new techniques for classrooms. And so ultimately, we're helping the developed world and we're helping the developing world. Now on obligations. Teachers have the ultimate obligation because they teach people how to better life, how to lift themselves out of poverty. Not throwing money and feeding people does not show how we can ultimately solve these problems in a long-term impact. So proposition is solving long-term issues, and the opposition gives somewhat short-term benefits. And ultimately, forcing teachers, if we're not forcing teachers, we are choosing the best teachers to go out, people who will not be forced because they have such a passion already. Now let's compare the worlds of the proposition and the opposition. First, on education. The proposition gives you benefits in the developing world because we teach them and train teachers to increase education, to lift people out of poverty, and we ensure the best teachers in the developed and developing world. We give independence for the developing world, we give a future, and the opposition looks to themselves, hates all developing countries, but does not solve issues that are affecting our world today. Therefore, I urge a vote for the proposition.
Thank you. I'd like now to call upon the third opposition speaker.
Today, what we heard from him proposition. No justification other than giving us lessons about being little angels and bring them to everywhere, which we are not obliged to. And today in match we see three main questions. Firstly, can we do this to this teacher? Can we force him to go there, which they did not give any obligation other than saying that they should be good people? No, ladies and gentlemen, we don't have to be good people. We just don't. The only obligation we have is not harming anyone. The only obligation we could have was if we harm someone, then we should be forced to do something to him. We don't have to be good people, and this is not our obligation. And second question was, should we do that? And is it our priority for our government to send our teachers to these countries or to our own countries? And the third question was that is it pragmatic? Is it going to really solve problems? So firstly, to begin with the first flashpoint, can we do this to the teachers? The team proposition said anything to our first speaker's analysis and the second speaker's rebuttal against their obligation point, which they did not give, ladies and gentlemen. They said that we have to be good people, and if we are not good, then we cannot have our job. Ladies and gentlemen, let me clarify the obligation again, like my first speaker and second speaker. In the street, if I don't give money to a poorer person than me, my government does not punish me. Why, ladies and gentlemen? Because I didn't harm you. But if I steal his money, then the government punishes me. So, for example, by the same logic, they should have said we should give our own, open our houses to the homeless people, give our money to the poorer people to be good people. So the obligation, their understanding of obligation is terribly wrong, ladies and gentlemen. So also we ask you, why teachers, ladies and gentlemen? Yes, maybe teachers may help them more than the crash collectors, but we didn't say that why teachers are pragmatic. We said that why teachers have to go there. Why we can't force these teachers? I'll take you for a moment. Why, as individuals, we can force kids and take their right to give decisions for their own future.
Side proposition would like to point out that true passionate teachers do not need to be forced.
Yes, then they can go voluntarily. Why are you forcing the other teachers? It's not possible. Thank you. So firstly, in this point, what we told you, ladies and gentlemen, which they did not give anything again. We said that as a government, we cannot send our teachers. Why? Because these teachers are working hard to get for this future. They are investing money. They are investing their time. They are investing their whole dream for their future. And as the government, we have, as the opposition, we have analyzed you. Why the government do not have the right to force these teachers to do anything. And even if, ladies and gentlemen, we could force these teachers to do something, it would not be going to teach the other countries, but to our own citizens, to the citizens who pay taxes to get education services. And again, no analysis from the team proposition against the taxpayer principle, ladies and gentlemen. Our first speaker and second speaker clearly pointed out that our citizens pay money to us, ladies and gentlemen. They work for us, they pay taxes, they have founded this country and they have the right to get the education from their own teachers. So they did not clarify anything about this point other than saying that these countries need us, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, we accept that they need something, but we already give them developmental aid. And they said that money is not enough, ladies and gentlemen. So, firstly, if education is that important and if it is going to solve every problem in this country, so why don't they use this developmental aid, which are costing 70% of their income? Why aren't they using this money for education? Because they have more priority needs, ladies and gentlemen, they're hungry. So we believe that you cannot solve everything by sending teachers. If you could, this country would already do that, ladies and gentlemen. So we believe that it is not pragmatic and it will not solve the problem that easily, ladies and gentlemen. So, secondly, the second question, should we do that? As I explained in the introduction too, we said that we still have some educational problems. We still have some regions which is lack of education, and we should use our teachers to go there. And even if, ladies and gentlemen, even if we do not have any problem in our education, we still believe that our priority is our hospitals. We can, even if it is a minor step, we can still go a step further in our own education system, and we believe that this is more important for us, the well-being of our own citizens other than the other countries, which they, again, no analysis from the proposition B. And thirdly, is it pragmatic to do so? My second speaker came here telling us 1, 2, 3, 4 arguments about why this will not be pragmatic. No response, ladies and gentlemen. They just said that we are going to solve the problem of these countries. But we say, I'm taking a moment, we say that you cannot, ladies and gentlemen. Yes.
The developed world has been giving this developing world money and aid for decades, and it hasn't solved.
Look, if sending, firstly, we do not have to solve all of these problems. This is not our obligation, and we could not clarify anything about it. And secondly, even if we could solve something, this is what we had to do. We gave them developmental aid. What does developmental aid mean, ladies and gentlemen? The help we give to them to develop themselves, so they cannot develop anything they want, including education. If that would solve everything, so we see that it could not. And secondly, the point of my second speaker, we said that the teacher is going to get difficulties. I'm asking you, ladies and gentlemen, if I feel that my life is in danger, if I feel as an alien in a country, if I don't want to work here, how can I be efficient, ladies and gentlemen? And again, how they can justify me sending me there why I don't have anything. So why I didn't do anything to deserve it. So, ladies and gentlemen, they said that we will decrease their dependency. Firstly, I have already enlightened you that it will not solve that much of a problem as we have already told you. And secondly, we said that their own teachers will not be developing as we keep sending the teachers from our country. So they will not develop themselves because we already give them. As you said, that don't give me the fish, teach me to fish fishing. So their teachers will not be developing. So you will not give them.
Ladies and gentlemen, this debate was not about whether teaching those kids is good or not. We consider that, yes, education is really good, really important for those countries. We consider that, actually, teaching will be really useful for them. But the question, actually, should we do that favor? Do we have to do that favor? And actually, doing that favor will solve all the problems as they do. That came to the point of that we explained this debate on two main questions. The first one, what we solve? Actually, do we solve the real problem? The point was, education is really important, not solve everything. But what we are saying, actually, as I explained in my argument, in my presentation and second positive argument, but that actually by sending teachers that you actually don't self-dependency. Actually, you create another dependency. Actually, you will always be the one actually fulfill the education of this. Actually, you don't actually create a sustainable place that, and beyond that, there are other priorities in these countries. Therefore, development doesn't work because those people are hungry, ladies and gentlemen. Those people don't have homes, ladies and gentlemen. Those people home. Those people can't find water for themselves because of their other alternatives, their other priorities, which are a lot more important than education. Because they actually those problems are a lot more bigger than this. We believe that actually because of those reasons we can solve these problems by standing those things. Therefore, development actually will solve those things. Then actually we will be able to have the educational second step of it. We can't build house without having a basic. And what they are saying, there are other problems, ladies and gentlemen, on those countries. There are corruption of democracy. There are economical inefficiencies. There are social problems such as racism, discrimination. Therefore, that teaching wouldn't work on those countries. Actually, you will need a lot more. It's not an efficient proposition. But even if, actually, yes, also, what they are saying, those things can solve this, those good people exist, those people go there, and actually, what they are proposing will be able to done by actual volunteers. But again, even with volunteers, it wouldn't solve the total problem. But even we can solve the problem. Even if it actually will solve all the problems in those countries, should we solve it? Do we have to solve that problem? The first one for volunteers. But yes, countries can have more volunteers, but they couldn't give the connection between countries and teachers, not even the individuals. Countries and teachers. They didn't show actually why teachers is different than other countries. They said that the nature of teachers. We don't expect that about teachers. Because we don't think actually it's better caring about with your family. It's not actually that like caring in your family, that's something that everyone would want. And secondly, but this first one was obligation that actually we don't have a clear obligation because we don't have a solid heart. We don't have soul down. They couldn't prove any soul down done by those individuals, those teachers. Actually, what they were doing is not a good thing better for them. That's secondly, individual right to pursue our life. But I think those people afforded for their college tuition, for their money, for their time, and what I think, by telling them that you are making their life work, and this is not justifiable things done by government. But I think you can make your life, make your students' life better, but since your aim actually should be making their life better, and third, government's obligation to their public. But I think actually we are not even in a situation, even the developed countries. We still need teachers, we still need educational things. And even if we don't actually what I think our participation should be our people. Because those are who establish our country, who fight for our country, who actually was the elements of our country and who face them. That's what we need that for.
I now call on the last speaker of this round, from Team Opposition to the third time.
The United Nations is a great organization. It provides food aid, it builds houses, and it fights for democracy and transparent governance around the world. And yet, what the United Nations doesn't do is provide a sustainable foundation in which developing countries can actually construct their own societies and their own countries. And so today, with 5 proposition plans, we will see that providing education to developing countries will benefit the global world. Now, let's examine this debate from 2 sides, the principle or the moral part, and the pragmatic or the real-life application of these morals. So let's get started with the moral. Now, one moral that was very prevalent in today's debate was the question of obligation. Now, side opposition states that we're not obligated to be good people, that we're not obligated to do anything good, because as long as we fend for ourselves, we're okay. Now, side opposition finds that not only intriguing, but also questionable when these teachers who are teaching our next generation their morals, their character, and all of these things that shape children when they are most susceptible to influence. That side opposition is saying that these teachers can be allowed into classrooms and influence our next generation negatively. Now, side opposition realizes that governments do actually force righteousness on their people. That government banned slavery not because it was practical, it caused lots of economic harm, but governments did this because they knew it was the right and the moral thing to do. And side opposition doesn't realize that governments also have a heart too. And yet, side opposition also realizes that even if this law is instituted, and even if the United Nations takes over, that we're not actually forcing teachers to go, because you know why? If teachers don't like this, they can choose not to be teachers. Side opposition can become businessmen, or bankers, or construction workers. They don't have to be teachers, and side opposition realizes that true teachers will emerge from this plan, and that will benefit education globally. So now we see the real-life application of the moral of obligation, and we see side opposition clearly prevail. Now let's examine another moral, and that is again the one of human conscience. Now side opposition has stood up here and told you that we as humanity have a moral duty. And we have shown you that governments respond to the moral duty of humanity by making laws that may harm their own citizens, make them lose money because they can't own slaves and use them for plantation or do atrocious things. But governments have shown their will, and they have proved that they place morals above pragmatic. And that is something that side opposition wants to make very clear today. So we see that principle, in the end, outweighs pragmatic. And the side opposition today has proven that we solve pragmatic, that we increase education quality around the world, that we in fact allow developing countries to sustain themselves, to stand on their own two feet. We have shown that side opposition today makes for a better world, especially since side opposition has no other alternative other than doing the same thing, which is proven to not work. But even if pragmatics aren't important, you see that side proposition has also won the principle. That side proposition stands in the moral high ground. And side proposition has shown that governments and people around the world also value morals more than pragmatics. And so when you consider both sides of today's debate, the principle and the real-life application of these morals, it is clear that side proposition has thus shown the true moral standing that the world has achieved, and also has shown how this application of this moral will lead to a greater life and a better education for all around the world. Therefore, side opposition is extremely proud. Thank you.